Morning, everyone. How's everybody doing? Morning, Fabian. All right, while we're waiting for everyone to get here, please note there are some changes in our schedule for the last couple weeks of class as we work on research paper conferences and head toward final exams. This is today. Okay, on Monday, we will meet for the first session for peer review. While you guys are peer reviewing, I'll be meeting with people on their research papers. So I'll have you in breakout rooms. And then please take the class evaluation after class. I have the link here. You can paste this into it, or you can go to MCK resources on the main page and click on course evaluation. We do not have class on Wednesday, the 25th, Thanksgiving holiday. And then the following week when we come back, we do not meet on Zoom any longer. You have the final exam on Monday, November the 30th. It's basically the same format as the midterm. You'll have all day to take it. It's the same kinds of questions. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the last week's, what we're doing?
How does the course evaluation work? Exactly.
For the course evaluation, you can either paste this link in your browser, or you go to the main page on Brightspace. See where it says MCK resources? You click on that. One of the options is course evaluation.
Right. But like, how does it evaluate you? Like, what's the process?
Oh, it has a series of questions that it asks. I also like to use the feedback. Like, this is the first time I've done it fully online. So if you guys have any suggestions, I mean, it gives you some space to write some things. Not everybody does. It's up to you. But for example, this is the first time I've done it synchronously over Zoom. So I don't know what it looks like to you guys. So if you have some suggestions, I appreciate them. Because I'll be doing this class in the spring the same way, and I'll be able to incorporate it for them. But it'll just ask you questions about basic things like, did you get certain knowledge out of the class? Did it work like you thought it would? And it'll give you space to make comments if you want. Does that make sense?
Right. Okay.
Let me see if it'll let us look at it. I don't know if it will because I'm an instructor. I don't see these until next semester. So feel free to say whatever you want to say. It's not going to affect anything. Okay. I don't even think I know who does. I think they're anonymous. Okay. But it's just like a series of questions like, you know, did the class meet on time? Did we cover the things that you felt we needed to cover, all that kind of good stuff. But it also lets you comment if you wish to. Okay.
I got it.
All right then. So this is our schedule. If you're in my EN280 class, I also posted a schedule on that class for the last weeks of class. Okay, so essentially we'll meet Monday, the week of Thanksgiving, for the first part of class. And then if you have any questions or concerns, you can ask me about them during your conference. So please be sure to bring any questions about your paper, and we'll get to those first. Now, we only have 10 minutes to talk. If you end up needing more time, we can schedule some more time at a different appointment, just so I make sure I get everybody in. But I can give you some more time to ask questions if you need it. We'll just have to schedule it differently. Okay. All right. So this is here on Brightspace. If you don't have to memorize it, it's right here if you need to know if you should be in the Zoom class. So we'll be in Zoom class at 8 a.m. on Monday as usual, but we'll only meet through 8:40. And then I'm going to be conferencing with people. So only come after that if you have your conference. Okay. Okay. There's some things I want to cover. Some of it's review, but it's been a long time since we talked about it. Let's look at the final exam review just for a moment. So these are all of the topics that are going to be on the final. I will post a link to this later today. So just like I did for the midterm, I don't think I have as many handouts. I may add some handouts to this, but these are some links that we looked at in class, and then there are some extra ones just in case you want a different perspective on something. So the one we looked at on the 3 argument appeals, appealing to people's logic, to their emotions, and to their sense of fair play, and as a writer, as a fair-minded person, that's ethos, right? Your appeal is the author. Then the emotional appeal and the logical appeal. How to address counter arguments, which we've been talking about this week, and which hopefully you're working on and adding to your draft. Considering who your audience is. Evaluating sources. This is especially important because for this paper, you might start, since it's a current topic, there might be more articles that are more recent and not at the library. So make sure that you're looking at legit sources, right? And you're evaluating them for, is this recent? Is it taken out of context? What is the motivation? Are they trying to sell you something? Are they trying to give you information? Are they trying to give you propaganda? So just make sure you take a wary eye at your sources, any of them that you choose that aren't at the library. Logical fallacies we've been talking about. So you're going to need to be able to tell me about several logical fallacies. These are the bad arguments that fall apart if you look at their logic. So you don't want to use these, and you don't want people tricking you with them. So you want to be familiar with them. We're going to talk about a few more today that are popular. Signal phrases. I'm going to talk more about this in a minute because I'm seeing a lot of dropped quotations in the last paper. A dropped quotation means you just have a quote in your paper without any of your words attached to it. So we'll look at examples of how to fix those. Ellipses and bracket use with quotations. We talked about this pretty long ago, but so I've got a couple of videos we're going to watch here to review it because that will be on the final exam. Academic style is also, I'm seeing a lot of errors in academic style in the last paper. So get rid of those contractions, no personal pronouns. I found another good sort of link. Let's look at it here. This has a nice chart to it. So these are the don'ts, and these are the do's. Okay. So no slang, no phrasal verbs, no personal pronouns, contractions. They tell you to avoid rhetorical questions, but you can use those for the introduction like we've talked about. Personal adverbs, you guys are pretty good with those anyway. No bullet points, unless you're quoting something that already has them in it. No basic language, okay. You know, couch your language carefully, use good vocabulary. I like how they have this list of words. So then you can search for these words in your paper and replace them. That'll automatically upgrade your language. Okay. And then, of course, I am seeing a few people who are still struggling with the citations. So there's a video here that goes over how to do in-text citations. And then I have this sample paper, and for a lot of people who had their work cited, a lot of people did fairly well with the work cited. You just needed to tweak the spacing a little bit or title it works cited or something small like that. So this is a whole paper that shows you what all the formatting should look like. Take a second here. Okay, so you see it's got all of these notes in it. You can blow it up when you're looking at it so you can see better. You guys are pretty good with this part right now, of that being on the first page, but it's got notes about things, you know, and where the formatting should go, all the way down to a works cited page and what it should look like. So the most frequent thing I'm seeing is you don't have your works cited title, you don't have it centered, you don't have it on its own page, and you've got extra spaces, which I understand the instinct to put spaces between the sources, but this whole thing is double spaced. There are no extra spaces. If you see, I've got it. Let's look at a bigger version of this. If you want to just look at the works cited page, you're feeling comfortable with everything else, here's just an example of the works cited. But you see how there's just like one space and then there's no double spacing between the next source. Okay. The fact that you have the hanging indent here makes this stick out. So we can just find easily where the next source starts. And it should be in alphabetical order. Some people didn't yet have it in alphabetical order. Okay. So worry about this for your second draft. Right now, we're going to get all the content down, but that's why I said you don't have to have a works cited page for this first draft. You can put it, that's fine if you want me to take a look at it. But you don't, when you're working on the second draft, make sure you got all of your formatting correct so I can check it out for you and make any corrections. Okay. All right. So if you see anything in particular on this list that you have questions about, please email me. I'll also have a little time at the beginning of class on Monday if you guys want me to review anything. So make sure you take a look at this before you come on Monday. So if you have questions, I can answer them for you. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about some of those things it's been a while since we've talked about. Actually, I'm going to go back and share my screen again. So the first one are ellipses. Ellipses are those 3 space periods that indicate you took something out of a quotation because you didn't need it. That's how it's used in academic writing. They're going to talk about it using it in dialogue also. But for our purposes, if you need to take something out of a quote because you don't need it, you put 3 space dots to indicate something has come out. So they're going to talk about that here.
Hello, grammarians. Hello, David.
Hello, Paige.
So in this video, we're going to talk about a piece of punctuation called the ellipsis, or ellipses in the plural form, as we have here. So what is an ellipsis?
So an ellipsis is a punctuation mark that is actually made up of 3 periods with spaces in between them. Boop, boop, boop. And it has 2 main uses.
Okay.
Use number 1, it indicates a pause in speech. So like when you said, hello, David, and I said, hello, Paige.
Right, so that ellipsis in the middle shows that you're pausing when you're speaking. So like there's a lot of reasons why you might pause in your speech. You might be hesitating or thinking or just whatever the case may be, you can use an ellipsis to show that you're pausing.
Right. And usage number 2 for the ellipsis is that it shows that a portion of quoted material has been taken out.
Why would you take some of a quote out?
So we have here, Paige, you have chosen a quote from the renowned wizard and orator Albus Dumbledore, and he says, "Words are, in my not so humble opinion, our most inexhaustible source of magic." If you wanted, you could kind of take out that aside, that "in my not so humble opinion."
Yeah, I don't have a lot of space on this screen, so I don't want to write that whole thing, right? So I can say, words are, ellipsis, our most inexhaustible source of magic.
So, okay, so Paige, I have a question.
Yeah.
Why do we even need this? Why can't you just say words are our most inexhaustible source of magic?
That's a great question. So if I quote someone and I just sort of willy-nilly take words out without indicating that I've taken some information out of the quote, I can make it seem like someone said something totally different to what they actually said, right? It can be so easy to misconstrue someone's actual words.
So ellipses keep us honest, basically. They show that there's been some kind of alteration to the quote. And since you have a limit on about how much you should quote, or like only about 10% of your paper should be directly quoted word for word from a source, the rest of it you're going to paraphrase or summarize in your own words, then sometimes you don't need parts of a source. So you want to be able to take those out so you can save space for the quotes that are really needed.
So this shows that this isn't exactly what Albus Dumbledore said, but it's the point that I want to get across with my quote. Does that make sense?
I think so. So you're saying that there's kind of like an ethics question here.
Right.
So how do we like accurately reproduce someone's words without misrepresenting them?
Totally.
So it shows that you have messed with it somehow.
Yes, exactly.
But that you're calling out the fact that you've cut out pieces so that people don't necessarily get the wrong idea.
Totally.
But I think there is kind of an art to using an ellipsis, right?
Yeah, I agree. You know, you could use it in, you know, technically wherever you want when you're quoting someone if you want to take something out. But if you use it over and over or in the wrong places, you can still misrepresent what a person was saying.
If you wanted to, you could render that sentence, "Words are my opinion."
Yeah.
Right? If you didn't use ellipses, you could just render that however you please, because those are words that were said approximately in that order, right?
Yeah, without ellipses or
without ellipses.
Okay.
You know, you could just be like, "Words are my opinion,"
Mm-hmm.
and that's not exactly what Dumbledore said, right?
Right. No, that's not what he was saying at all. Those are some of the words he said, but that's not the idea he was trying to get across.
So you have this responsibility with ellipses to do the right thing, to really represent the way that somebody speaks accurately.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about the end of someone's sentence, and I want to indicate that at some point after I've cut off the end of the sentence ends. Where do I put that extra period, or do I need an extra period?
Right. Okay.
So let's say our sentence is something like, "I like cheese, although I'm more partial to a Wensleydale than I am to a Cheddar or a Stilton." You might want to just be able to write that sentence as, "I like cheese, ellipsis, period." Right?
Yeah.
So we're still including the terminal punctuation in this sentence.
Yes.
To show that it ends after the ellipsis.
Right. Yeah. That ellipsis there is showing that stuff has been removed, right, from this quote. And then that final period is showing that it's the end of a sentence, just like it normally does. Because, like, the ellipsis, you know, looks just like 3 periods, but it is its own thing and doesn't stand in as a period.
So if we didn't have that final period, it would just sort of look like you were trailing off, like there was a pause. "I like cheese."
Yeah, there would be no end to that sentence.
Right. But those are the two functions of ellipses then, is that it indicates a pause in speech, like, "Hello, Paige," or it shows that a portion of quoted material has been taken out.
Yeah.
Words are our most inexhaustible source of magic.
That was a great Dumbledore impression.
Thank you, Paige. You can learn anything.
Okay.
Albus out.
Page out.
Cool.
Okay. So just to review, The ellipses show that you've made a change to the quote, basically leaving some words out. All right. So that's what the 3 period, space, period, space, period. That's what that means. You left out something that presumably you don't think is necessary to the sentence or to what you're discussing. So that saves you room and allows you to quote more by getting rid of the stuff that you don't need in the sentence. And it also keeps you honest about showing that you made some kind of change to the sentence. Does anybody have any questions about that part of it? This is a handy tool to have when you're writing this paper and writing any future research papers. So one other additional use of ellipses I want to talk about has to do with long quotations, and we really haven't talked about, because we haven't added a lot of long quotations in here. I'll talk about how to see. Can I close that one? Hold on one second. Here we go. So when you are working on your paper and you want to quote sometimes several sentences in a row, like maybe somebody has a really good explanation of something that you want to share with your audience, if your quote starts running, you're typing it along and it's running more than 4 typed lines, and then you want to stop, and instead of just putting quotation marks around it, you're going to indent it 10 spaces from the left margin. Okay, so see how this is the regular text, and then they're indenting the quote once it hits 4 typed lines. Everybody with me so far? Now in this case, I know I've told you the period goes after the closing parentheses. Well, just to make life difficult, because they've got it indented and they know there's no danger that you think that this citation will go with something else, then they're just leaving the period after the last word in the sentence right there. But generally, if you'll remember, the period is going to go outside the closing quote parentheses, right? If you just have a sentence within the text, so that makes sure that we know that this goes with this sentence, that citation. But if you indent, you do it like this. Okay. So this is only if you have a quote that's more than 4 typed lines. You get to 4 typed lines, you want to indent it. Now, for the ellipses, another use of that 4 dots that they were talking about, let's just say, I don't want this sentence. I don't think it's helpful to my analysis of the literature. I don't need it. I'm going to take it out. Okay. So in this case, I'm not just taking out like a few words within a sentence. Like if I took these words out, I could put ... and I'd be covered. But if I'm going to take out this whole sentence right here, okay, I'm going to use 4 space periods to show that I've taken out at least 1 sentence or more. So is everybody with me? So if I'm reading through a long quote and I see you've got 4 dots here, I know you took out at least a sentence. If I see 3 dots, I'm going to assume you took out a few words within a sentence. So that's the difference. So 3 dots equals words taken out within a sentence. 4 dots means you took out at least a sentence, or possibly several. Everybody understand? This is just sort of to let your reader know that there might be a longer passage in there. They want to go look at your original. But that's what the dots mean. Also, a nice thing about MLA is they don't generally require you to put those dots at the beginning of a sentence or end of a sentence if you're taking off words, only if it's in the middle. So I know they had the example in the video, but MLA style allows you just to, they realize you're manipulating the quote sometimes, just the grammar. You don't want to take out important stuff, but if you're taking something off the end or the beginning, they're usually words like there are or unimportant words. Okay. Any questions? So I'd like for you to be able to explain this to me on the final exam. Okay, and then the other tool for working with quotation marks that we've talked about are the square brackets, right? And that's when you need to add something, usually for clarification purposes. Okay. So they say we Americans call them square parentheses. Okay. But the main thing is to add something into a quote to make it more understandable. They're used for explanations. Okay. And that they say this is not the work of the original author. This is something I added to make it easier to understand. All right. So she said, if I can't keep her, and she's talking about her horse. So we didn't see the original, right? So they're taking this quote out of context. So we don't know what she's referring to. So in square brackets here, they put her horse to let us know that that's what she's referring to. Okay. So it's explaining what the pronoun refers to. So you'll frequently see square brackets used for that. Okay. Or if you don't want to put it afterward, you can just go ahead and replace the word. Okay. So here the square brackets replace her. Also, you want your signal phrase to flow smoothly into the quotation. You don't want to sound like it's spliced together and doesn't quite match up. So you can change the grammar of something to match. So here they're just showing they changed instead of the original was scream, and they added the ed ending so it would flow. She screamed the house down. Because you wouldn't say she screamed the house down. Okay, that wouldn't be grammatically correct with your signal phrase. When they took her horse. Okay, so it's been modified to fit grammatically into the sentence. So anytime you see square brackets, this means the authors added something to the quote for some reason. Okay, they also have some examples of ellipses. Now there's another one that I don't think we've talked about, and that is using this little word sick. Okay, that's a little Latin word that means as I found it, which means this is what it was like when I got here. So in this case, they have misspelled a word. So if you're quoting something and it has an error in it, maybe it's just a typo, what you want to let your reader know is you didn't do it. It was already screwed up when you got there. So right after the error, you put this little word sick in square brackets, which indicates this is an original error in the original quotation, and I didn't mess it up. Okay? So you don't run across this as much in research papers, but you might when you're like quoting literature or other texts, or maybe opinions, if you've got somebody's story or opinion in a paper, and you're using it for the ethos appeal. So it's often used to explain something in a quotation, replace something, okay, or indicate that an error already existed in the quotation. So Hedy Lamarr once said, most people save all their lives and leave it to somebody else. And she's clarifying, we're clarifying what she was talking about, the subject, which we didn't get to see because it was taken out of the original source. She's talking about money. Okay. Also, if you have a foreign word and you need to define it, another thing you can do is put in square brackets after the foreign word a translation in the language that you're writing the paper in. So ellipses and square brackets are useful tools to help you manipulate quotations and make it easier to put them in your paper correctly. All right. So I will ask you about these on the final exam. Everybody okay with that? And as I said, I posted some of these underneath the final exam review here. So you can review these when you're studying for the final. All right, let's talk about one more logical fallacy. One second. So this is an extremely popular logical fallacy. I like to go with the favorites. Okay, it is called argument ad hominem.
Oh God, I hate that fallacy with a passion.
It's really commonly used, and it distracts people. So I mean, it generally achieves its purpose, unfortunately, but it's not an argument. So let's take a look.
Good grammar and spelling are important, but if you want to write essays that inspire.
Hi there, internet commenter. You've been sent a link to this video because someone is concerned that you might not be.
I'm not concerned you're using this, but they have created these videos. So if you're arguing with someone and they use a logical fallacy, it's hard to explain to people that they're using an argument that doesn't quite work. So you can link them to one of these videos to show them the problem. Now, whether or not they'll take that kindly is another story.
Arguing your case to your utmost ability. They're concerned you might have used a fallacy to make an important point, thus defeating your own claim. The fallacy they're concerned you might have
The
used.
screen isn't being shared, by the way.
Ad hominem attack. Ad hominem criticism is where, instead of criticizing the argument or ideas of the person with whom you are conversing, you criticize the person themselves, and in so doing claim you have also criticized their argument. And boy, is this one popular.
Oh,
Ad
yes.
hominem criticisms are not always, but are very frequently fallacious. Unless the character or actions of the person making an argument are directly related to the matter at hand, criticizing them and not their ideas is a fallacy. Ad hominem attacks are the bread and butter of political advertising. Criticizing a candidate and saying that because their character is bad, their ideas and policies are also bad. John Smith literally hates little children, and so his ideas about salmon fishery safety regulations are wrong. Dead wrong. A related fallacy is tu quo qui, where it is argued that a person making an argument has behaved in a way inconsistent with that argument. Their behavior might be inconsistent, but it doesn't necessarily make their argument wrong. For example, it's really important for fast food restaurants to be clear about the salt, fat, and sugar content of their food, doubly so because of how cheap it is. Obesity is a real problem in America. What business do you have asking companies to disclose this stuff? I saw you eat 2 Big Macs and drink 34 ounces of high-C orange lava burst yesterday. This is an ad hominem tu quo qui attack. Mike argues for the presence of certain dietary information, and Straw Mike says that based on his behavior, he lacks the authority to do so. Straw Mike's response doesn't at all approach the point Mike is making, though. Mike is arguing that if certain dietary information were widely available, it's possible that an effect on obesity would occur. Ad hominem attacks make it so the person being attacked suddenly has to defend their character and not their ideas, when in fact their character has no bearing on the conversation whatsoever. And also, it's mean. You seem like a nice person. No need for insults. I hope this description of the ad hominem attack has been helpful. Happy conversing.
Okay. Can I share my screen with you guys? Oh no.
Yeah, the screen wasn't being shared.
Oh, I am so sorry.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay. Let me see how much time we're. Okay, good. We still have 5 minutes. I apologize. I thought I had shared my screen. Getting to the end of the semester, definitely. So hopefully what you heard made sense. So anytime you see someone insulting someone, you should ask yourself, is this relevant to the argument? I mean, sometimes it is. I think I just saw that there was a pastor of a mega church who recently was fired for cheating on his wife, right? So he's in a position where where he's a religious leader who's supposed to be encouraging his followers not to do things like cheat on his wife. So that might be relevant to talking about him. And it's not just a criticism or name calling of him. That's relevant to who he is and his job, right? But most of the time it's not used that way. Most of the time you just see like just random insults that they will hurl at people that don't have anything to do with the argument in question, but sure get everybody distracted and angry, right? So both sides do this of any argument usually. You usually don't want those people helping you. You just like, let me make my logical argument and you go stand over there somewhere, please. So be careful. I mean, sometimes we feel passionately about things, right? And it's natural that we get angry and we want to hurt the other side if we feel like, you know, they're doing something wrong. But if you remember the TED Talk that we were talking about, like losing can be winning if you get new information, if you get a new perspective. I know it's hard to think about it that way in our competitive world. You know, there's places for competition. You should be competitive about some things, but I don't think arguing is one of them. Especially in politics, because they tend to not get anything done. So yeah, I've seen a lot of things that insults to President Trump, where they call him, you know, the Orange Hitler or something like that. That's not really relevant to criticizing things you don't like about him, right? I've seen him call people names also, like he calls Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. And he basically has a nickname, an unkind nickname for a lot of people. So those aren't arguments, right? When they hurl insults at him or he hurls insults at them, it's not really adding anything to the discourse that we need to solve problems, right? It sure can get people to fight and distracted, but it really doesn't achieve much other than making you momentarily, I guess, feel better that you called them a name. And I mean, we're human. It happens, right? But hopefully you'll know that it doesn't consist of a logical argument. Jason, you're the one who said you hated it, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
What annoys you most about it, do you think?
So what annoys me most about ad hominem is that, like, even when you say, hey, what you said about me just now isn't really relevant to the argument itself,
Mhm.
they'll still insist on using it, you know, even when they're aware of it.
Yes. Yeah, because it works. Unfortunately, sometimes on some people. It's like the Lincoln quote, you can fool some of the people some of the time, some of the people all the time, but you can't fool everybody all the time. But
It's like, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
They're like, if you're watching a debate online, like if you're debating in front of an audience like that, like they'll take like your insult as like a legitimate rebuttal too.
Yes, they will.
It's like,
Well, we got one more minute, so I want to take our break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the special exception he talked about, because I'm seeing this a lot lately, which is argument tu quoque, where you basically accuse a person of being a hypocrite and say they don't have a right to talk about something because they've committed some offense in that area. So we'll talk about that when we come back. I'm going to end this session, and we'll be back at 8:45. Okay? See you in a few minutes.